communicate. And then comes perspective taking. When we say perspective taking, that is where, of course, the decoding also happens, but also our ability to understand. See, for example, when in mediation, especially if you watch, there will be parties who will come with a lot of emotional baggage and they will go on and on. And even if you stop them, they won't listen. So that is why we say at every point we have to summarize and we have to rephrase whatever they are saying. We have to validate their feelings. We have to give a name to their emotions so that they don't repeat or they feel that they are hurt. But what happens is when we are doing this perspective taking, there is there is a need for the ability to comprehend, and then both of them must be on the same wavelength. How many times we say, I tried to call you, but the call did not go through. Only if it is on the same wavelength, the call will go through. It's the same thing. So perspective taking is after the intention, I must be able to understand what the person in front of me is talking. So there must be an effective decoding, and we must be able to perceive what the other person's point of view is. So in any communication, the first part is the message, the second part is the intention, the third part is the approach, and the last is the dialogue, or what is it that jointly they are trying to achieve. So then the meaning is decoded. There is an active listening, there is a questioning, there is also paying attention and understanding the emotion. There is also an empathetic listening. There is an effort to respond only when there is a proper dialogue. Now, what is the difference between a dialogue and a monologue?
Ma'am, dialogue is a two-way communication, whereas a monologue is a one-way communication.
Yeah, but why do you need what is a need for a dialogue and what is a need for a monologue?
Ma'am, dialogue is actually when two people are talking. It's like an open-ended communication between two people. But then monologue is somewhat used in theaters or something like that, where people are giving speeches.
Yeah, it's mostly like when they are giving speeches. But even now, lectures also at one point of time were deemed to be just monologues. But today it is not like that. It is more of interaction because everyone needs to be awake and everyone needs to understand what is happening also. So it is important to understand that in any communication, it is not just words that are said or sounds that are made. More than that, there is an intention to communicate something. There is a need for the other person to understand this person. There must be a perspective taking, and then there must be a dialogue in the way of questions or exchange of information, because of which both come to a level where they are able to understand the whole thing. Okay, so now when we say this, what are the real styles that you would have seen? Have you seen people being very aggressive? Have you seen people being very, what shall I say, passive, not bothering to answer at all? Yes, because what happens is in our own way, because of our conditioning, because of our personality, which we spoke about, we develop different kinds of styles of communication. Now, Elaine Rousseau says she divides it into a quadrant, and she says direct, spirited, considerate, and systemic. And she says which is high in assertiveness, which is low in assertiveness. When it is direct, what happens? It is based on values. Yeah, this is the right thing to do. So this is how it has to be done. So what happens is in most of the formal, when a superior talks to an subordinate, or when a college lecturer is talking at the first instance about a topic to the students, it is very direct. It is, what shall I say? It's very formal, and it doesn't enable a dialogue at that level at all. It only wants the other person to listen wholly to what is being communicated. But when there is an emotion attached to it, and when there's somebody is trying to express what they are feeling, then it becomes animated. So then what happens is it is not more, what shall I say, a well planned, well thought out speech. It is more spirited, it is spontaneous. And what happens is there's a lot of moving of hands and body movements. So all that also communicates something. But in considerate, what happens is this person it's more of an empathetic listening or empathetic communication, where they are more open, They understand the need of the relationship. They want to be very supportive. And in systemic, what happens is it is very analytical, it is logical, it is only looking at the facts, it is looking at uh, what is the next thing that is to be done and how is to be done, that kind of a thing. So, in these four communication styles that Elaine Rousseau talks about, what we understand is that people, depending on their personalities, can either be just say, oh, this is what has to be done, you better do it, or they can say, oh, I'm so excited, if we do this, this will happen. Or they can say, look, can we do this? Do you think this doing this would help us? Or they can even say, I think, this has happened, so I think we should do this. So depending on the style, the relationship would also be affected. So what we have to understand is, in any communication, how we respond will also change at different points of time. How the other person responds to it or reacts to it will also change. Especially when you're doing mediation, you will find parties reacting or parties responding. And we have to understand what is their communication style to help them. Because especially if they look at a direct person as very confrontational and they don't talk, we will have to ensure that this person also has a chance to express themselves. Now, there was one doctor in Los Angeles, apparently, I read about it. And to his students, when he took class, the first lesson he gave was what he called as persuasive listening. And he said that when you go to see a patient and you stand at the entrance of the room and say this patient has had a hip fracture, the only remedy is to lie down flat for a month or 6 weeks or something like that. So nothing can be done by the doctor actually. But he told them that if you go to the entrance of the room and stand and ask, how are you? This person may say, I have pain or I'm better or something like that, and you go off. They won't feel that comfortable as when you go near them, stand near the bed, catch their hand and say, how are you doing today, ma? Even if they are in pain, they will start feeling better. And I think that kind of persuasive listening is what helps a better communication. So how do we use these communication styles to help the parties to understand that they have to move beyond this is the most important thing. Now, when we say this, what do you think about manipulative styles? When we say passive, we say aggressive, we understand. But people can also be manipulative. What is that?
Ma'am, indirectly controlling someone.
Yeah, in how?
Ma'am, meaning something else, but saying something else, like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Proving their guilt point.
A mother saying, oh, you're my child. I love you so much. I have done so much for you. Won't you do this for me? So what happens? The child immediately does that for the mother, right? All of us would have experienced it. But what is the mother doing indirectly is manipulating the child to get that act done. Oh, this is a simple matter. But when in a workplace or even in any other relationship, if the other person is able to manipulate this person, what happens? The other person starts feeling guilty. There is something, of course, in restorative justice, we deal with it. There is something called the shame-blame compass. Either you're shamed or you're blamed. And so what happens is, because of that, you tend to do something or you tend to accept something, but you really don't want, you don't believe in that, you don't want to accept it. So it can be manipulative. There can also be a cooperative style. A cooperative style is where you want to listen, you want to get at the intention, you want to do something. On the other hand, passive is you don't care what is happening. You say, okay, you want to say, you say something. Nothing is going to change in this place. So I'll just accept it. So that is not a very positive way of listening. So when a person is assertive or when a person is aggressive, they may put off the other person. But then they may have strong reasons also. Or they may be personalities who believe in being like that. But a passive person, on the other hand, this person is a person who has sort of given up, who is not really making an effort to do something positive about it. So It can also be a stage where it can be passive aggressive. It looks as if they are passive, but they will only do what they want to do. So, and when they talk, their communication is also like that. So, what we have to understand in all this is that there are different types of communication. And the most important thing for us to understand in this is that we have to first identify what is the kind of emotion that is being displayed there, and how will it uh, sort of impact the mediation. Now, having seen this, what different styles, the next thing that we have to see is what is emotion and how does emotion impact communication. Unless we understand or we are able to perceive emotion, we won't be able to understand why they are communicating in this particular way. For example, there was a matter in a matrimonial matter. They had lived in USA, and I don't know how many of you know that in some parts like Andhra, Punjab, and all that, people go and do a lot of textile business in USA. So what happens is somebody in the family will be here and they will be sending the goods, and someone will be in US and will be selling it to all those malls and all that. Now, here, this husband and wife were living in US. They had two children, and mostly the husband used to come to India. He was from Andhra, and he used to buy, or he used to, meet with the people who are dealing with textiles here and get it and send it to her. And he would also do the marketing there, but she would ensure that the things arrived there on time and the money was collected, and she would keep an account and all that. So both of them really complemented each other. And because of that, the money that they made, he bought a lot of properties here in India. She had no idea where he had bought also. He bought a lot of properties. Ultimately, at one point, they fell apart and divorce was initiated in USA. She had two grown-up children at that time. So whatever assets were there were divided, and he actually planned and got the divorce there so that the properties there were lesser. And so she got the divorce. Only after that she realized that the properties in India were not divided. So, but she had no idea about where the properties were. So she came here to Chennai and she filed a suit for injunction restraining him from selling the properties. When you file a suit for injunction, you have to give the list of properties, but she didn't have. I don't know how that matter was taken up by the family court, but it was referred to mediation. And when she came in, the first thing he said was, already my divorce is through, so why should I go through this again? I won't do anything. And her lawyer came and told us, no, we have filed the suit only to get the list of properties because we know some of them are here, some of them are in Andhra, some is in Bombay, but we really don't know where. So just get us the list of properties, we'll handle the rest. Now, mediation is not for us to do this fact finding and getting them this information. So we had to close the mediation. But before that, we attempted mediation. And after the opening statement and all that, the opening statement gives them an idea of what the process is and how it will be conducted, and sorts of sets the tone for the future dialogue between the parties. And at that point, the man who came in and sat like this, when the first he came in, he was a huge person, 6'3", broad, hefty person. And he said, what is this these people are doing here? He sat like that. But after the opening statement was over and we started discussing and we were asking him, what would you like to do? He was so angry that he'd been drawn to court here. He walked in and sat like that. But once he listened to the opening statement and he understood that we were not pressurizing him to disclose something, he said, I've had a very bad relationship with my wife. You won't understand. So I won't give her anything. But I'm prepared to give it to my daughters. That I would settle on my own. I will not bring it here to the table because I don't want her to, I don't want to have a dialogue with her. So actually at that point, we got a chance to understand the way he sat, the words that he said, the tone in which he said. All that gave us an understanding of how frustrated he was or how angry he was. And the way he was expressing the whatever he wanted to say made it clear, although he was very aggressive, I would say, made it clear that it was not his stubbornness to not do anything, but he didn't want to be dragged to this court here. Of course, he could have laid all that in, open in front when they got the first divorce in USA, but he didn't do it. he had been manipulative in that way. But then after this, he was prepared to say that he would settle properties on his daughter. And I later heard from the lawyer that he had done it. So the first part is we have to understand the emotion. We must be able to recognize what is it that is happening there, and then we must use that emotion. So when you say use the emotion, how is it in communication? You say, sir, I understand that you have had a good relationship with your daughters. Now, of course, I'm sure that you mean to do something. He may not have, but when you say, of course, I know you mean to do something, but do you think that it will be good for them to know what you would be, because you are now living in India, you're not going back to US. Now, what can be done? So this kind of phraseology, what happens is it sort of makes them believe that we are supporting him, makes them also understand what they have to do, and then there is a shift in the thinking. So first is the perception of emotion, second is the use of emotion, and of course in the process we also have to manage the emotion, because the moment he came in and he threw himself on the chair and he shouted and all that, we had to say, sir, I don't know why this matter has been referred here, but the court having felt that this has to be settled, I think we'll just tell you what mediation is about. If you still feel that you don't want to be here, you can go back. But then if you think you can continue with the dialogue, we'll see how we can go about it. So this kind of, management, what happens is also helps us to plan a strategy for taking it forward, also helps us to understand how to make them interested in the process or interested in the relationship. The whole thing is about building on the relationship. How do we build on this relationship? How are we going to take it forward? So it's very, very important to understand how we can build on the relationship to make them express their true emotions, express what they are going through. Most of them will not even recognize what they are going through. So it's important for them first to understand what they are going through. There is one Mark Brackett. Actually, he deals with a lot of school children. He's a neuroscientist, and he has created what is called as the ruler. And he says the first thing is to recognize the emotions. The second is to understand the emotion. And the third is to label the emotion. When I say label, what happens? See, when we are doing mediation, what we do is when they say something, you don't know about this person at all. He was never taking any responsibility. He always came late to the office, or he did this, or he didn't supply it on time. All that anger is there. So you say, when you are summarizing, you say, so from what you said, I understand. You don't say, this is what you said. You say, I understand means your understanding, it gets deflected from them. So what happens is they don't feel that some allegation is made against them or something, or we're making accusations against them. So when we say, so from what you said, I understand that your subordinate has never been on time. And so you have been frustrated because you believe in punctuality. So instead of saying he's always late at 5 o'clock, all this, you have succinctly put it in a way that he understands the focus is on punctuality. And for that you have said you feel frustrated. So these are the words, these are the cues that help them to shift from that emotion to something more positive. So that is where the expression comes in. And once you are able to regulate how they are able to express their emotion, then the regulation will follow. And so what happens is at that stage, they are able to restrain their emotions and be more communicative about what can be done. Now, any doubts so far? Any doubts so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So then, when we've been talking about these emotions, we've now come to the point of expressing it. When we say expression, of course, we say words and sentences. What do you understand by the words sentence? What do you mean by sentence?
Sentence, combination of words which together make something comprehensible and something which can be understood together.
Yes. So In school, we were taught we must have a subject, we must have an object, must have a verb, and all that. Why? Because when you want to communicate something, the intention comes later. But when you want to communicate something, then you want to put it in a cohesive manner so that the other person understands from it. If see, I may say Delhi going 20th, that may also give you a message. But whether I am going, somebody else is going, you may not know. But if I say I am going to Delhi on 20th, then you'll have clarity about the whole thing. So, what this Bruce Fraser says is that there are markers in a sentence which help us to understand what is the intention, what is it they are trying to communicate. And that he divides into pragmatic and content. When he says content, content is what is it that the speaker is talking about. When I say I'm going to Delhi on 20th, that means I'm going to travel or I will reach Delhi on 20th. So that is the content. So this person is going to Delhi on the 20th, so there is a travel. That much is the content. But what is the pragmatic meaning here? So it's the first thing is there must be what he calls as basic, then there must be something called a commentary and something called as a link between all this. Now, when you say basic, what he means is if somebody says you have to finish this by tomorrow, but you have already made plans. Like last week, when I was talking about this class, I had already made plans to travel. So I had to tell you people that because I'm traveling, I will tell you later about when the class will be. So this is something that communicates that yes, there will be a class. But then when will it be? I will communicate later. So that is the basic thing. Yes, an action to be done is accepted. Something that is to be communicated is accepted, but there is a rider to it. That explanation comes in the next one. That is the commentary. Yes, I will inform you next week is the commentary. So any information that goes on. So when a woman says, I have put up with this man for 10 years, I'm not able to take it. He's an alcoholic. He beats me. He verbally abuses me. I'm not able to stay in that house at all. I try to stay for the sake of the 2 children we have. But then enough is enough. So I have filed for divorce. So what does she mean? Anyone?
Ma'am, I feel that the content in this is that she doesn't want to stay here.
Yeah.
And the commentary is the reason that why she doesn't want to stay. Like he's an alcoholic, he abuses and stuff like that.
Yeah. So the basic is she has decided to move away. She doesn't want to stay. So she says why she doesn't want to stay there? Because of the abuse. That is a basic. And then the commentary is how he has been abusing her verbally and all that. That is there. But what is she really communicating through this? There is something parallel to this. After the commentary, there is an addition in this.
Ma'am, that she's being subject to cruelty, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Subject to cruelty is also part of commentary.
Yeah, ma'am.
But what is this that she's adding to it? What did she say in the beginning? I have been staying with this man for 10 years. I have put up with this abuse for 10 years. So why, if she didn't want to stay with him, would she stay with him? So she says, now I'm tired of the whole thing. So that means if he had reformed, she would have continued to stay there. If his behavior had changed, she would have continued to stay there. So that is what is parallel. So there is an intention also, but there is a hidden message in that. There is some addition that is being conveyed. When she says, 10 years I have put up with him. See, there was this case where, how these people supply sand for building construction. So this was Marwadi guy was supplying to a company, construction company, and this contract had been cancelled. And when the contract was cancelled, of course, he had filed a suit for damages, and those people had also filed another suit, and both the suits had come for mediation. And again, he said, for many years, I've been trying to get this contract because, and in that case, his wife was the person who was doing the business. So again, a principal agent also, you will find communication is different. And he said, so we've been trying because we've been supplying to small construction people only. Now this is a big company. This means I will get my payment on time. See, for small construction companies means I have to go behind them. I have to, and sometimes it will be more than a month or two before I get the payment. But here means by every 10th of every month under the contract, they were supposed to pay. Now suddenly they cancel this contract. How can they do it? Believing this, I've got 2 more lorries and all that. Now those people said there was a, and again there was a legal officer who had come there, and he had no idea what happened at that time. This was because it was 4 years before this matter came up for mediation. And they said, no, from our records, what I'm able to say is that there was a shortfall. It was not the weight that was supposed to be supplied, and that's why we canceled the contract. So then this clarification. So now what is the basic here? Basic is there was a contract. This man was supposed to supply sand. All that was fine. And then the commentary was that it was to be paid within this 10th of every year thing, and this lorry had to go there. All those details were there. Now, parallel, what did he say? I chose this person because my payment would be on time. So that gave us a clue. So when we went back, asked him, how important is it? He said, no, if they renew the contract, I would prefer to go back because it makes it so much easier for me. And when we went to the law officer and asked them separately, they said, no, the shortfall was there. Okay, then was it communicated to him? They said, no, from our records, we find it was not communicated. So we said, okay, it should have been communicated then. So now what do you say about it? So after that, what happened? Both of them came together and they started talking. And this man offered to, waive off the interest and all that. They also offered to, renew the terms. On a renewed terms, they were prepared to give him a contract. And the whole thing got finalized in a way, only because this person said that for a long time I had been trying, and by the 10th of every month I would get the payment. Whereas if I had to go with other people, I won't get that kind of, money on time. So these are the markers there. Something that gives us an idea about something that is they know, but they have not expressed it fully, or they are trying to express and we are not able to, and that has not been on the table for discussion in a proper way. So what has to be understood in all this is that there are cues. So when she says, I tried for 10 years, I put up with this man, hoping that he would change, but he's not changed at all, and I have no hopes now. It means that she has been okay with the marriage. She wanted to, for the sake of the children, of course, she said, but if the circumstances were different, she would have continued to stay there. So then you go back and ask her, what is it that he can do? Or go back to him and ask, say, no, she has done so much. I mean, go back and ask, what happened? Has there been good times? Has she done something for you? Then he may remember something. So these are the cues that help us to understand. And we must be always vigilant about that. And that is where listening also comes in. Now, in the Indian knowledge systems, these things are generally referred to in 3 segments. What they call as, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikari. Now, any communication, see, last time I told you to do an exercise after the class. Close your eyes for a minute and see whether you can, after a minute, see whether your mind was totally blank or you were thinking of something. Those people who have tried it would have recognized that your mind doesn't stop at all. So in any situation, or even when we are awake, as long as we are awake, of course, dream state is a different thing. When we are awake, what happens is our mind is always churning. Some thought or the other is coming. So when we want to express also, the first thing is, once we have learned the language, there is a sort of coding within the brain itself about how I want to express. Say your brother has taken away your cell phone and gone off somewhere. And you're in an urgent mood to go somewhere and you need your cell phone. You're so upset. You've told him not to touch your cell phone. He's taken it and gone away. The first thing is, what happens? You're upset. There's an emotion. You're angry. And then in your brain, what happens is you start cursing, you start shouting, and you want to say all that you want to tell him. That gets formed in the brain at the first instance. Now, the second part is where it becomes verbalized. The first part is where you get the thought. The second part, Madhyama, is where it gets verbalized into words. And then sort of you feel that you have to express it in a particular way. You can't leave it. You can't be very nice to him. You can't be passive to him. And Vaikari is where the actual expression takes place. So what they say is that there is a gap between the thought and the expression, the Madhyama. And that is the point where you can pause, you can restrain, you can formulate how you want to talk. And that has to be cultivated. Without cultivating, there's a whole lot of thesis on Kashmir Shaivism on this, Vakya Padya. They talk so much about sentence formation, about expression and all that. Now, this is very, very important for us because the Western ideas teach us about styles, about language, about markers, but doesn't tell us that ultimately it is what is the emotion that is driving our thought and making us express it in a particular way. It is up to us. See, as I said earlier also, when we are very angry and the person who has been the reason for the anger is in front of us, we tend to shout. But if we meet that person after half an hour, or if we had reason to understand the context in a different way, we don't have the same anger after half an hour. So this is I mean, every time you won't get half an hour, but what I'm saying is that there's a small gap. It's just like, even now, if you see, you take a deep breath and then you let it out. That turnaround, there is a small pause. So that pause is what helps in every communication. What we have to understand is that you take in whatever is the message communicated, look at it in the sense, be objective about it, consider how it has to be expressed, or whatever you feel about it has to be expressed, then the whole thing will change. So it's very, very important to understand that in communication, what we are doing is we are not only talking about emotion and talking about words, we are also talking about how the whole thing comes into an expressive state. Now, when we say this, we have to understand something called sahridayata, because empathy is what? What is empathy? Anybody, can you tell me about what your understanding of empathy?
Being able to feel the other person's emotion and going to the shoes of the other person to understand what he is going through.
Yeah. So if somebody says, I have been hurt very badly, I mean, maybe even a vehicle dashed on the road and pushed them down, and they've been very badly hurt, injured, and they're saying they are in so much pain. Can we really feel that pain? We can understand what an accident can do, how that kind of a hurt can be. Okay? But we can't really feel the intensity of the pain. But you know what? We say generally, standing in the other person's shoes. The Western concept is fine. But when we say to our people, standing in the other person's shoes, why don't you think about what can happen, or why don't you give me a different proposal? They'll say, I'm not a fraud like him. I'm not a fool like him. I won't be so, idiotic like him. Because our people already have, a sense of positive emotions that are driving them, have a sense of they are right. So for them to resonate with the other person, that sahridayata is something more than empathy. There was a very nice definition of, differentiation of empathy and sympathy. Sympathy, generally we know, is feeling sorry for another person, right? So he said, if you're walking on a road and there is a pond on the side of the road, and somebody who doesn't know swimming slips into the pond and is sinking, you see that and you feel sorry. Oh my God, this person has gone into the water and doesn't know swimming. If you jump into it, that is sympathy. Because you also don't know swimming, but you jump into the water thinking you can save that person. But on the other hand, if you see this person struggling there to come to the shore, and you find a rope or a stick there and you throw it to them and say, hold on to it, and you pull them in, that is empathy. So empathy is where you understand the difficulty and you do something more positive for them. Now, for that, there must be a sort of a resonance. Unless there is a participatory communion, unless you are saying, oh, I understand, or You make them feel that you have understood. And that has to be in a space where they feel safe, where they feel that they are accepted, they are whatever they say is being recognized for its value. So the most important thing in Sahridayata is that the Sakya, or the uh, what shall we say? Sakhi means friend. So the Sakya Bhava has to be there. And then the dialogue which follows must be something which is neutral, which enables somebody to identify the communicator with the receiver, and then make them feel that they are one with this person, they are understood. So the Sahridayata is very, very important, because there is one Nirmala Mani Achari in Kathmandu University who has developed a model of communication which is very, very helpful. I will go into it a little later. Now, when we say Sahridayata, do we also mean anything else in this resonance that we was talking about? We were talking about emotional response. We were talking about seeing as the same thing. Have we, at any point of time, seen this as looking at it as a spectator? When we are talking about a dialogue, what do we say? We say both of them can exchange information. They are talking. They are. It's not just one person talking and the other person listening. Both of them are exchanging information. We were talking about observing the emotions also. But when we say spectator, what is the difference? A spectator is one who has the volition to take in what is happening. See, I may be going on the road. I may see various things, various people. Do I take in everything? But if I want to cross the road at one point, I will be looking at the signal which provides a pedestrian crossing. So even though I'm walking on the pavement, there are a lot of people, there are vendors, there are numerous things going on there, and I want to go to the other side of the road, I will be looking at this busy road where there is a signal and where there is a pedestrian crossing. So this anuragin, or my willingness to look at it, my attention on that is very, very important. There needs to be a focus for that. And only if that is there, then we will be able to look at it for what it is. We will be able to remove the veils that are covering it. And only after that, there will be a possibility for seeing it properly, or understand, or what shall I say, having a proper emotional response. So resonance is not just about understanding about talking. It is also about what shall I say, being a spectator, releasing the veils, ability to look at it non-judgmentally and have an emotional response. Now, when we say this and we are talking about dialogue, what do we mean by hearing and listening? Anyone? What is the difference between hearing and listening?
I'm
Ma'am,
hearing
Yes, anyone?
ma'am, hearing is just mechanically taking the speech, but listening is actually understanding intentions, also the emotions attached to it.
Exactly. So listening is more because it goes into the root of the communication. Hearing is any sound. You can listen to the birds chirping. You can listen to, you can hear a car honking. You can hear music. You can do something. But when you are listening to it, what happens is you're listening to the content there. And for that, it is very, very important to understand. Why is this? We have to develop that skill. Generally, people think that they have the skill, but they really don't have it every time. Now, that is why in effective listening, what is said is that when we say listening, we think we are listening. But normally, we are not always listening properly. Half-heartedly, we'll be listening. Okay, you tell me, I'm listening. And then we'll be doing something else. Most often, the complaint of wives is that the husband will be reading the newspaper and whatever I say, he will not listen. And the husband would say, oh, whatever I say about the financial, she never listens. She goes out and buys whatever she wants. But why do they feel that they are not listening? Because you need to feel heard. Have I been heard? Have I been understood? So that is where that response that you're giving, that sahridayata comes. So the first thing in reflective listening is to understand what are the cues that we spoke about earlier, the content, the words and the meaning, the feelings and the context. The second is how do we select what is to be understood? As we saw in parallel, we have to see what is the other thing that is trying to be expressed there. What is the real essence that is there? And unless we are doing that, see, when we talk about attentive listening or when we talk about effective listening, most often we fail to see that unless you communicate that you have understood what they have said, they will not feel satisfied. That is why reflective listening becomes very, very important. Once we pick up the cues, once we sort out what is it that is being expressed there, and we are, well, as I said, when we say, I understand you're frustrated, I understand that you put up with this man for 10 years because you hope that he would change his attitude, but he hasn't changed. So there is a framing. Most important is feedback. At every point of time, oh, this is what I think has been expressed. So that is where reframing and summarizing happens. When we are saying, I understood from what you said, this happened. You entered into a contract, the contract was for so and so, you had to supply it like this, and the payment was to be made on the so and so. So this feedback, this going back again, it's a loop actually. When it goes back, they understood, they feel that they have been heard and they are happy about it. Now, putting all this together, Professor Nirmala Mani has formed what is called as a Sadharnikaran model. So he says, as we spoke about earlier, the Sahridaya, he says first there must be a sender and a receiver, and then in any communication there is an emotion, there is a mood that has to be identified. The next is the encoding, how it is expressed, how the tone, the body language, the words, the framing of the sentences, how it is encoded has to be recognized. And then after that only, the real message that is being tried to be communicated. What is it that the person wants to say by saying all these words? And then today it can be channel of communication, because today what happens is we have a lot of electronic communication. Now, when we say electronic communication, what do we mean? In mail, especially people say that the color of the font, the size of the font is important. So I read recently that if a person has been trying to arrange a meeting, sends a message on Friday evening saying that it will be good that we have covered all this if we have a meeting on Tuesday. This is the message that is being communicated, okay? Whereas the same message can be communicated on Tuesday itself for next Tuesday. Now, what is the difference? Saying that we have covered all this, we have understood what is it, when shall we meet? Can we meet on Tuesday personally to discuss everything? If this is communicated on Tuesday of that week and Friday of that week, what is the difference? Anyone?
Ma'am, sorry, I didn't understand the question.
No, if there has been, say, a contract is being negotiated and both parties have gone through most of it and finally they want to meet. So this person X sends a mail on Tuesday saying, I think we have discussed the basics. Now we should meet in person to finalize the contract. Can we meet on Tuesday, next Tuesday? Okay. The same mail, if he sends it, instead of sending it on Tuesday, if he sends it on Friday, what is the difference?
Ma'am, gives a bigger timeline to be prepared.
Yeah, that is there. Other than that?
And shows proactiveness that he wants to engage.
Mm-hmm.
Because that
in both he wants to engage. In Tuesday and Friday he wants to engage. But what is it? One is time. Yes. Then?
Ma'am, he's showing emotions that he uh, by sending the mail priorly, he is showing that he wants to engage. Basically,
Yeah. So there is a difference between the West and us. Now, what they say is in the West, if it is sent on Tuesday, it means he wants him to plan Friday evening before he leaves for his weekend. And he doesn't really intend to have that meeting on Tuesday. He's sitting on his desk on Friday evening before he leaves for his weekend. And he doesn't really intend to have that meeting on Tuesday. So these are also markers. Today, because we have international communication, we have to understand the same thing is happening in India also. So in India, the so it is not just the channel of when we say channel of communication, it is not just the words. It's not just email or text messages. It is also the timing and what is intended to be communicated through that. So that is also very, very important. So anything else that you can think of? Sorry. The context also. The context in which the communication is being made. If a person, as I told you the other day, when this father told him in front of his friends that you're a useless person, if the father had said it when he was alone, he wouldn't have felt so hurt. But when he said it in front of his friends and when he was really at the point when he was winning the game, it made a great impact on him. He was being asked to go out. So the context and what are the barriers? Sometimes, when we are talking, how many times, even on a cell phone, when we are talking, we have disconnections or we have, breakup of the voice and all that. And we are not able to listen to it and listen to the message that is being communicated properly. So there can be various barriers, or as I said earlier, we may not understand the language. We may not understand the nuances of the language. See, in Tamil Nadu itself, we have various dialects, and how people communicate it is different. But generally, I'm sure all of you also understand. In Hindi also, night is Ratri, okay? In Tamil also, it is Ratri. In Malayalam, they say Ratri for night, but for the morning, they say Ravila, which is some similar. Ratri and Ravila seems similar. So when I used to go to Kerala for trainings, and one of those men, one day came and told me, I mean, he was talking and he was leaving. And at that point, he said, Ravila Kanum. That means we'll see. So, but I didn't know the meaning of Ravana at that time. I thought, why should he come and see me in the night? He was leaving in the evening. So I said, why should he come and see me in the night? And then only next day when they were talking, I listened to them the way they were talking and I understood Ravila is morning and Ratri is night. For fever, for cold, we say pani in Tamil. In Malayalam, pani is fever. So all these are, small words, but they convey different meanings altogether. So we have to understand the nuances also. So these can be barriers. Ultimately, he talks about feedback. See, it's a Sadharnikaran model is very, very important today because it identifies how proper communication has to be. Based on, I'll tell you, I won't have time today, but I'll try to do it later if possible. There was one King Janaka. I mean, there are a lot of King Janakas in Mahabharata. Okay. There was one King Janaka to whose court one lady called Sulabha comes in. She's an ascetic. She comes to test him because he's supposed to be very spiritually great. And she comes in the form of a very pretty young woman. So when she walks into the court, this King Janaka, of course, says, "Oh, why have you come here? You are a pretty lady." And the words that he says and the tone in which he says, makes it clear that such a pretty lady is only intended for, use by men. That's all. So then she stops him and says, you're supposed to be such a great spiritual person. How can you talk like this? And she talks about what is proper communication. She says how it has to be objective, how there must be clarity and all that. It's a whole topic altogether. But she also talks about feedback and about how a message has to be communicated. So these are, various, from our text itself, we understand how communication has various other factors which have not been really dealt with. So the main thing that we have to understand, especially in mediation, is that there are personality traits which influence communication. One is when some people are very conscientious, so they're very careful. So they only use appropriate communication. They will not, say something wrong in the presence of the other. Like as a lawyer going to a court, naturally in a court, you have to have an appropriate behavior. You will be saying only the appropriate words. Sometimes it is because of the setting also. Sometimes it is because these people come from such backgrounds, they will use only such proper words. Sometimes it is because of approachability, where their attitude itself is like that. They don't want to hurt another person. So they will be they may be passive aggressive, but they may also be using words which are very neutral. Sometimes it is agreeableness. These are all, see, personality is different and personality traits are different. These are personality traits. When they are agreeable, they are more, they want to connect. So they will do anything, they will say the words that will make it more conducive for people to connect with them. Sometimes some of them are affected because of emotional stability. They are very sensible and they want to make it very, again, neutral. Extroversion is another, where they are very enthusiastic, they are very outgoing. Now, a person may feel that they are, say, a party going person. They are always, looking out for something which is fun. And they'll say, now, it's time we have to go for this party. You may have something else in mind, but they won't listen to you at all. They will go on and on only about that. So it could be because of extroversion, sometimes because of self-control. Now, approachability and self-control are to a certain extent similar, but here it is more of handling of the emotions and, managing whatever is there. Social intelligence, which is another topic altogether, awareness of the self and knowing knowing the others also. Gratitude is the most important thing. Because when there is a gratitude trait, what happens is they appreciate. So a sense of, even in this sand case where I told you, although he felt wronged that the contract had been cancelled, there was a sense of gratitude because once he got the contract and they had been taking the material from him and paying him on time, he had a sense of gratitude. That also came into at one point of time. Optimism is another factor which sometimes drives the communication, and you know how optimism is, and morality and ethics, which is always there in anything. So personality traits, emotions, and the kind of language that is used is also very, very important. Now, there is one, Peter Wilberg, he talks about qualia revolution. He says, in any sentence, there is a sound which is hearing and a choice of sounds which sounds right. So, if I say, in your talking and I say, you will feel, okay, I can go on. And if I say, you may wonder what is happening. So, what he says is that in any, qualia itself is how we feel about it. So he says in this qualia revolution, one is that you must hear the sounds. The second is what is right. And then when it goes to what is right, there must be an intention to express and it must be expressed properly. Sometimes when we think that we are saying the right thing and it sounds right, but it may not be sounding right to the other person. So how it has to be sounding right to the other person is also very, very important. Basically, what I'm trying to impress on all of you is that it is very, very important for us to understand that in any speech, any communication, what we have to understand is that first we must be able to appreciate. We must be able to understand the intention. We must be able to analyze. We must be able to recognize. We must be able to respond. And most important, we must give a feedback. Unless there is attention, unless there is appreciation, Though we say it should be non-judgmental, there has to be a sense of analysis also. So putting all this together in communication, what is important is like for today. I've been talking for the past 1 hour, I think. Yeah. Now, what did I try to do, and what did you get from this? Anyone?
Ma'am, what role communication plays in a mediation, and how are we supposed to go with the cognition or markers? How are we supposed to perceive those markers?
Yeah. So this is the gist of it. But then, when you were listening to me, I can't say that. Even when somebody talks to me, I can't say I will listen to the whole communication that is being given there. So ultimately, it is attention, my volition, my willingness to listen, attention, and then understanding the intention. And as I said, Sahrideta, there must be an identification. Unless I know the language, unless I understand the language, unless I'm prepared to understand the emotion that is driving this communication, unless I understand what is the style of communication, I will not be able to appreciate the communication. So, in communication, though we talk generally about verbal, non-verbal, passive, aggressive, and all that, more than that, yeah, as I said, it must be persuasive listening. There must be a reflective listening. Only then we will be able to really understand the context and the uh, what shall I say, the message that is being communicated, and to make it into a fruitful action, to respond to the situation, understanding of the context and understanding of the possibilities there. So, to get the larger frame of what is being communicated, we have to not only focus but also to be responsive to that. So, I hope this has given you structure for you to understand communication so that you can build on it. Each one of us develop our own style. But the most important is we have to develop our reflective listening skills. Okay. So, any questions?
No, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We'll meet next week then.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.